Hello everyone, this is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching, and I'm back with part 2 that goes with number 182. Well, this is 183, and it's beginning quilter hand-stitched 2-patch, 3-color dramatic geometric 12-inch blocks, and this is part 2. In the last part, we looked at our fabrics, we looked at the patches or pieces that you were going to need and cut those. And we did some beginning sewing. And here is, again, is what the quilt looked like. And here is what the block looked like. So maybe you remember that, and maybe you've got some of it done. And let's move on to the next part. While you're looking at our block, I wanted to tell you a couple of notes that I thought would be helpful. When you get ready to piece your blocks, that means to sew them together, you do not use quilt thread. You do not need to use quilt thread. It's really strong, and you don't need that. Just use regular sewing thread. The next thing is, when you start sewing pieces on, I found that if I'm sitting in the chair, I rest my right hand on my leg and use it to support me as I'm starting to sew across, and it really helps. All right, and if you look, I've completed row 1 with simply those straight lines that we were talking about. And I've opened the seams up and I've pressed them. I made sure that my green block was the second one on that top row. The other thing that I did, because it would have taken us time we don't need, is in our center, we already had this done. All right, put it on the other 3 corners. Then you needed a set of blocks, a pair, that were a cream and a green. And if you look at it, I've marked them that the left-hand side is going to have the green one on the bottom, and the right-hand side is going to have the green on top. And this pair was laid on the center, and I stitched it, and then I did the other side, stitched it, opened it, and pressed it. And I did it already so that you can see that I wanted it to hit where I had a little point here, and I had a little point here, and I'm going to show you how I got to the point up here and added the top, which is basically the same thing, because once we finish this top piece, that would mean you could have done these pieces, and then you'd be ready to finish the last row. And the only difference on the last row is you've got the 2 whites, and then you've got the green block. Before we get into that sewing the rows together, I had one more hint to give you. As you remember, we were putting the green squares onto the background, that center color. And this is another block, and that's why I have a cream in the middle. But instead of trying to deal with this over here on this side, an easy way, and I even do this sometimes, I'll take a break from starting there, and I'll come into the middle. I've got my thread knotted. I've got that nice sharp needle again, and I've go up and down. Here again, sometimes I have it on my leg, anchored my right hand on my leg, and I can do it. And you take and sew all the way across there, and it goes really quick, and it's easy to keep up with. And then you knot it off, and you're ready to turn the piece around. Got the pin stuck. You can turn the piece around, and where your last knot was, okay, and this has been cut off because I made it all the way over to the edge. Then you just come over here and you knot your thread and start here and then go out that way. And sometimes that's just a nice break from trying to go all the way across, and it's not as hard on your hand, gives you a break. So now when I get this little knot in here, we are going to be ready to look at this first row. Okay, the first row, is back. And what I want to do is, this is the way it's supposed to look. And I'm going to take it right where it is and go down like this. And you'll say, well, that's kind of funny to go to that, say all of that. But if you ever turn the piece backwards and you have to take it out, you'll say, I think I see what she was talking about. And this one, it is right. Okay, now I tricked myself because I had already fixed my line of stitching on this, on the other end, but I have a pretty good idea of 1/4 of an inch, so I think I can do it. But I would have drawn my line there when I was starting out. Now what we want to do is, these are squares that match up the squares on the back, and so we want to make sure that we do that. And so I came over, I've opened my seams, and I've laid these on top of each other. And I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to go in, and I go off to the left, because that sort of helps to anchor that back one. And these are two sort of different seams, so I'm sort of anchored. All right? And then you can anchor the end if you want to, but then you move over. We're not sewing yet, and we're going to anchor this one in. Now when I get to this part, this is the middle one where that little point is, I'm going to want to turn this over, and if I had wanted to, I could stitch down that side. And that's probably what I probably would have done, was turned it over, started over here, and then stitched across, because what I want to do is I want to hit right where that point is. There's the green stops, and I would have gone through that, and that's going to make my nice point on that side. But I've already got this turned this way, and so we'll just keep going, and we're going to match that one up and pin it, and we're ready to start. And here again, I'm going to use black thread, but you know what? I think I'm going to start with what I was just talking about, two different things. I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to start in the middle, just like I was talking about a minute ago, but I'm going to pull that pin out because I know that's in the right place. And I'm going to take and put my needle down right at the very edge of that point, picking up the paper there. And I'm going to go backtrack one time, because that's going to be a thick place right there. You got a couple layers of fabric. And then I'm ready to take off. This is a good sharp one, and I seem to be making some good progress. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I'm sitting there, like I was talking about, watching TV or listening to movies or going or outside or listening to music, there I've got it going really good. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out the pin where my next overlap is. And sometimes I backtrack there. I'll pull it up and then I'll go back one stitch, because that's where that seam is that we're trying to secure. And then move it over. And I'm going to go on across. And that's kind of a nice way to start a long piece too, is to start in the middle. If you've got it all pinned, you know right where it is. All right, I'm to the end. And that looks a little bit bigger than 1/4, but doing it through the camera, like I said, can be a little bit different. But I can see that it's pretty nice, and I'm pretty sure that it went all the way through. So let's peek at the other side. And there you can see that I've got it. And remember that the whole goal was to make sure that the two sides were attached to each other, so that it wouldn't pull apart, be nice and strong. And so now I already know where the middle is, because that's where I started on the other side. And you can just start and go down. Here again, I backtrack once, to lock that in place just because of where I'm starting. And I'll start across here. And now I've gotten all the way to the end, and I've backed it up, and I have cut off that. And let's see what happens when I open it up. I want to see if my seams are going to be together and if my point looks good. So I'm going to flip it back. Okay. Wow. All right. If you look at this one, this seam is lined up with that one. My point is pretty good. When I get it pressed, this is going to be really nice. I'm going to open the seam in the back and press it. And I made my point. Oh, that's a saying, made my point. And then I've got my other seam lined up. So then the only thing that's needed is to finish it up, putting your last row with the right orientation where the green box is now over towards the right, and this makes the box. And here's one thing that's so nice about this pattern is that once you get this used to that pattern and that block, and you've got it sitting just like I've got it, well, the next time that you add a block on, there's nothing fancy you have to do except make sure that it's sitting the same way that that block is. And so I'm going to move the black box over here that I had done, black block. And look, all we'd have to do is, after we got this bottom piece on, is press it and then turn the next block and lay it on just like we did, because these two are not together. That's what you want. Then you could go on and make your third block and then just lay it over there next to the black box or over here next to the green one. Either way you wanted to do it. But one suggestion is, if you decide you're going to make more than one block or two, go ahead and make your blocks and then lay them down if they're multicolored and see how you like them. That's a neat way to do it before you sew it together. Take all those blocks that you make and lay them out till you get either the colors like they're going the centerpieces, or they are the block itself, to make sure that they're all turned right. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. If you got anything out of there, if this helped you, please hit subscribe and like. Subscribe doesn't cost you anything. It just lets me know that you were here. And comments, and because this is a beginner's video, to ask questions can also go in that comment section, because that often helps other people. Thank you for watching.